Hey everyone, this is a clip from a recent episode of the Men of Steel podcast where we talk about Superman and Superman adjacent topics. If you enjoy this clip, check out the podcast. You can find it at certainpov.com or wherever you get your shows.
I like to think that I've become a better interviewer of scientists talking about their work. So Ben, a question I would have for you at this point is, when you were working on this paper, how much did you have a sense that like Superman's powers had evolved over time? Like in the earliest Golden Age comics, like he can't do all of the stuff that you had found yourself having to explain. Like, were you aware of that, or were you kind of just assuming that his powers as presented in the modern era were kind of static?
Okay, so this is actually, I mean, I'm showing my ass here a little bit, but I'm not much of a comic book reader. The deal was I never had any disposable income as a little kid, so I just never bought comic books. So my familiarity with Superman comes almost exclusively from watching TV and movies. And this is his canonical power set that I'm dealing with. But, you know, in the early Superman days, it was leaps tall buildings with a single bound, faster than a locomotive.
Faster than a speeding bullet, more
powerful than a locomotive, right? Leaps buildings, right? That was his canonical power set.
Yeah, specifically an eighth of a mile was his leap, and then they stated that it was only a bursting shell that could pierce his skin.
Yeah. Since then, some of his canonical powers apparently were modified during the Superman radio show era, when they needed essentially a Superman power to get the writers out of they'd written themselves into a corner, and they're like, oh, Superman can see through walls. Superman's weak against this rock called kryptonite, so now Superman has to go on vacation for 2 weeks.
And it was the Fleischer cartoons that introduced full flight, because they said Superman jumping all the time looks silly in animation.
Although they say that, but the opening sequence of the Fleischer cartoons looks pretty dope. Like when he just jumps a building.
Yeah.
I agree. So moral of the story is that I was, I guess, putting my neck out there. Like, right now, everybody knows that if you make yourself known at all on the internet for any reason, the haters are going to come for you. But I didn't know that back then because it was pre-social media days. And so I kind of dodged a bullet because nobody said, oh yeah, this is entirely wrong because this 7-issue spread from 1998 in Superman whatever says something totally different. Like, I mean, I don't know anything about Superman in terms of canonically what the comics have, how the comics have evolved over the maybe 50 years since the first cartoon came out.
Yeah, because when you and I were growing up, Ben, the John Byrne era of the Man of Steel comics in the mid to late 80s, that was when he introduced that idea of like Superman his skin isn't impenetrable, but he has like a bioelectric field that he somehow generates, and that's what like repels everything from hurting him. So they've tried to come up with some pretty wacky explanations, none of which I think are actually as elegant as the theory you put forth. Yeah, I mean that genuinely. And I think like if you throw in a little bit of like Krypton has higher gravity, so he's also just like, he is just a little bit stronger than a human would be, even given his size. Like there was a great moment in I'd never watched all of that Legends of Tomorrow show, but like I thought the concept was cool and I liked all the universe jumping, and at one point the Lex Luthor from that universe ends up in the Smallville universe with Tom Welling, and Tom Welling's like out chopping wood, and Lex Luthor like pulls out a piece of kryptonite to try to kill him, and it doesn't do anything. And Tom Welling's like, yeah, I actually gave up my powers many years ago so Lois and I could have kids. I haven't had powers in a long time. And Lex like thinks about it for a second and then tries to throw a punch, and then Tom Welling blocks it and then just punches him and knocks him onto the ground. He goes, I'm still stronger than you, Lex. I'm still a big farm dude.
Right.
It was such a good moment.
Remember, if you like the clip after you're done liking and subscribing, check out certainpov.com where you can find more episodes of the show as well as a ton of other great shows.